Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Shannon from Good Fruit. Welcome back for another episode. And today we're going to get a little bit more personal with how it is that I communicate with God and some of the things that He is trying to teach me. And I say trying because I realized this last week that I have a strong desire to help those around me. And the way in which I want to help those around me is not always the way which God desires for me to be helpful to those that are around me. This requires communication. Communicating with God to ask Him to lead me through all of my relationships. When I first had my encounter with Jesus, what He started to make me aware of is there were certain individuals around me that I really needed to start to see them for truly who they are. Everybody's kind of messed up. And so was I, right? Before I met Jesus. So there's that one understanding that I need to start to see the world for what it truly is, have the ointment placed on my eyes, and not so that I could judge the world, so that I could know and understand how God desired me to move inside the world and to live out the gospel with His instruction. One of the things that He's been working on over the last year and a half with me is me starting to go to Him for discernment, to understand what is the motives of those around me, how it is He desires for me to act, how it is that He desires for me to start to build relationships. And this is not one-sided. Not that I'm looking at everybody to be like, oh, how can you help me or how can I help you? It is this thing where it's like consistently denying self so that I don't build relationships that are all about how it is that people can help me. And then the same thing is now where it's like I've met Jesus and I'm going to these religious trainings that I've had as a kid where it's like, oh, okay, well now I'm supposed to continually help others. And Jesus is like, I need you to stop for a second. Because how I desire for you to help someone else is very different than how you continually desire to bring people in your life and, try to act in a way of saving. We all want to be the gospel, but we really truly can never be Jesus. We are not equipped in our nature to save anyone. We couldn't even save ourselves. So let's not step in the position of playing Holy Spirit, but step in the position inside the new covenant, which is to follow Jesus, to sometimes just be the gospel for other people. In order for us to be the gospel, it goes to discernment. It goes to communication. We need to start to ask how it is that God desires for us to be in this world. And depending on what we've encountered our whole entire life and our defense mechanisms and who we are as people, we might need to dial back some things. We might need to throw out some conditioning the world has given us. And for me, the conditioning is that I'm really kind to a fault in a way that I lack a knowledge of how to actually build correct boundaries. So it's either there's no boundaries at all, or I completely want to shut people off. And God is like, you cannot be so closed, because in order for you to be sent out into the world, you need to be able to be open, but not so open that you are consistently putting yourself in a way to be taken advantage of. Has it happened since meeting Jesus that there has been individuals around me that have lied, stolen from me? Absolutely. Am I mad at the actions? Partially. And mostly just because the motive behind it. Because I'm the type of person that would give you everything. Jesus has been working with me about how to be in a posture of love and acceptance, to remain open, but also to be somewhat guarded, to learn what it really means to be a disciple. The archetypes in the Bible of those that stole and misappropriated or took advantage of the disciples are not going away. They're not changing. But what we have to remember is even on the cross, Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." But that doesn't mean that you continue to do and let those around you take, steal, and destroy. You need to start to walk with Jesus and figure out, are these patterns that I am continually walking in that need to change? And then how is it that I live out the gospel? So this communication that we have restored through Jesus is really important, because discernment. We need to discern how it is that we live in this world through instruction. We can't go around and be Christian unless we hear the voice of God. You can't do for God. You need to do with God. Because at the end of the day, God doesn't necessarily want people to encounter me. He wants them to encounter him. So that process really needs to be hand in hand with him. And this is what he's helping teach me. I'm going to be called out into the world a certain way to meet people. And each person requires to be met a certain way. And sometimes that is going to be slow, and it requires patience. And it doesn't even require necessarily preaching, teaching, speaking about even Jesus at all. We live in a place where religion really has destroyed the hopes of any relationship that God can actually create with anybody. And it's awful, because you have to then step over that hurdle. But it's not me stepping over the hurdle. It's Jesus stepping over the hurdle. And that requires that I move out of the way and let him direct me through how it is that I live out the gospel for those around me. I'm not on a pedestal doing anything for God. What I need to do is actually step off the pedestal, move out of the way, and let him direct my life. And this is the thing with communication that's important for us to all understand. There's a level of humility that is required for God to be able to transform us, for us to transcend the desire to live inside this world, the desire to fit in. You will be called to step out, which means that sometimes you are going to have to exist in a place completely alone, be the only person in the room acting a certain way, and the world will not accept you. And that's okay. And sometimes the place that God places us for the people around us is a point of encounter that is meant to help them see the difference. For them to be able to look in the mirror and realize that where they are is a mess, and that you show them what it's like to follow Jesus in this place. And that requires moving out of the way. So communication and the things that he's been showing to me is like, I really need you to not react. I really need you to take a step back sometimes and be aware of what it is that I'm showing you. When I bring people into your life, sometimes it's just a point of encounter for them to see the difference. Sometimes it's a point of taking the shirt off your back and helping them. Sometimes it's a point of becoming a mentor for somebody. But don't make those decisions on your own. I'm making these mistakes and I'm learning through this process. And he's not allowing for me to make these mistakes and go too far, because I'm continually asking, are the decisions I'm making yours or mine? And I'm going to give you guys really great questions to start to help build your level of awareness and discernment in communicating with God through your actions, which are these two questions. Can I and should I? We are made with free will. So when you ask the question, can, the answer is always yes, because you can do whatever you want. When you ask should, the answer now becomes take my desire out of the equation and tell me only what it is that I should be doing. There is a few things that I did this last week that I didn't ask should and I asked can. Mistake made. It's really important that you continue to ask questions and dig further into what it is that God wants you to do and what he desires for you to do, and separate your own desire from his will. And this is where the communication is important, in discernment, in knowing the direction. We cannot live out the gospel our way. We can't live and be like Jesus without him telling us how to be like Jesus. Jesus was in communication with the Father like this. Every decision he made was the Father's will. We need to live out just like he lived out on this earth, which is being inside the will of God, which requires sacrifice and really requires discernment. Listening is the most important part of communication, but asking the right questions is probably the second part. If you ask questions out of your own understanding, you will always be asking, can I? Because the desire of self is always what it is that I want to do versus should I? And this is the lesson that I learned this week. And I thought I learned this lesson many, many weeks ago. I went through the Follow Project and we all go through asking questions with God. And this is like a foundational stepping stone. And the reason why I wanted to discuss it today is that I made a mistake. Is the mistake that great? No. But it is sort of in the sense of like, I'm stepping into a place to try to be loving to somebody, but God's like, that's not how I desire you to be loving for them. I need you to start acting out how I want you to act out because I know that person. You don't know them. So you don't know what it is that they need. And how you're desiring to help them is not bad, but it's just not correct. And I'm not trying to be perfect, but what I am trying to do is be the right amount of love in the correct way so that they don't encounter me, but that they encounter him. And this is why communication is the utmost important with God, to discern how it is that he desires for us to be and for us to know the difference between our desire to be the gospel and his desire. So that's what I learned this week. Really wanted to share it with you. Kind of that decision-making process, the questions to start asking, especially if you are hearing the voice of God. It's important to test out what you're hearing. It's important to ask more questions, to not just do. God will let you make mistakes. He will use all of it. I am just a person that really desires to make less mistakes. And what he's really showing to me is that's quite impossible. You are not perfect. He is perfect. The greatest thing about making mistakes with Jesus is that it's never a mistake. It's always a lesson to learn something. Because from the mistake, he can show you what is wrong and what is right. And in that note, start asking questions differently. Should I? Instead of can I? And until then, be good fruit. Anyways, I feel better about it.